In our conversation that we just wrapped up with Senator Bill Cassidy, with Dr. Bill, you asked him about mental health, and he quoted, and we had talked about just a little bit just before the top of the hour at 7. And you talked about Micah Johnson, the Dallas shooter. You talked about Gavin Long, the Baton Rouge shooter. He made reference to suspected PTSD.
Yes.
I got to tell you, I'm not so sure I buy that. I mean,
you talk to any guys who fought in Iraq.
No. But what I'm saying is there's lots of guys who were in Iraq.
Yeah, absolutely.
Afghanistan, any number of highly stressful situations. And they don't come back and shoot policemen. They don't come back and murder people.
Nope, they don't.
Understand. Look, you can look at the way the VA is run across the country. Incompetence of scandalous proportion. And every report has shown that. But I tend to think when and Dr. Bill talked about, like I said, the CNN report that talked about Gavin Long and PTSD. I got to tell you, I tend to think more just like the terrorist in Nice. Well, a year ago, 18 months ago, he seemed perfect. But you see that radicalization over time. And more than, look, it's just my theory, and I'm just telling you. But I tend to think more than it would be post-traumatic stress disorder that made you want to go out and kill specific individuals.
It makes you do things you would not normally do. And you obviously you obviously know the military suicide rate is double that of the general public.
Do you think this was...
Some of them are suffering from PTSD.
What's the story? Some of them are. I tend to think this was more a case of radicalization. So what you're telling me is that Gavin Long and Micah X. Johnson committed suicide by cop.
They murdered cops first.
Yes.
They murdered cops first.
Just the way you see, the way, hell, the Obama administration explains the lone wolf terrorist.
But
they were radicalized.
Had Gavin Long gone into a VA...
Yes.
And asked for help and been given help, would he have killed cops? We're...
But you're assuming he was mentally ill and not evil. You are assuming that he did that because he was mentally ill, not because
evil. I understand.
Not because he was radicalized somewhere along the way into thinking that the black man in America is targeted by law enforcement.
And could that have been caused by his PTSD? We don't know. We're armchair quarterbacking it now. Do we need to do more mental health, especially for our veterans? Abso-freaking-lutely.
Not arguing that at all. I'm not arguing that point at all. All I'm saying is I'm not sure these two instances where these two men who both had ties to radical organizations, both of them, you can make the case, radicalized over time just like Islamic terrorists over time. Well, a year ago, he was working at Burger King.
But are we partially responsible because we don't have the help?
Hold on a second. So now it's our fault.
Do we need to do more? Do we need to do better for those who come out of war situations?
For those who are suffering from PTSD, I think to some degree you might be making a leap. I think you can easily, just as easily, perhaps more so, make the case that these were killings by a political radical. Both of them. They specifically targeted one segment of the population, and that segment was law enforcement officials.